Hey guys, this is Parney from Dashcar Productions, and today's video is going to be about how to improve the shifting feel of a WRX 2015 Plus. Now, some of the issues with the shifting is the throws are too long and it does feel a bit sloppy. So some of the mods that I'm going to be talking about are going to be pretty cheap and really easy to do, and some are going to be a little more on the expensive side and a little more labor intensive. So some of the mods that we're going to be talking about are going to be pretty cheap and really easy to do, and there are going to be some mods that are a little more expensive and more labor intensive. So as we go through the video, I'm going to explain what I'm going to be doing, but feel free to do the other things as well, because all the mods I'm going to be talking about are pretty safe and very reliable to do. Before we start getting into this video, I just want to say if I'm missing something or wrong about something, please let me know in the comment section. You know, we're all here to learn together. That's what it's all about, right? So let's jump into it. So me personally, I want to make the shifting feel a lot more shorter and precise. And we're going to talk about how to make the shifter throw shorter. So one of the first mods that I recommend is just changing the knob. There's tons of different kinds of shift knobs. There's so many different shapes, material, color, and it can really come down to your preference. But I'm going to talk about a very particular one in this case from Shift Solutions, and what it is basically a round ball, and I'll show a picture over here, and it's actually called a countersunk. Basically what that means, it's designed to sit as low as possible on the stock shifter assembly. So what it actually does is reduce the shifter length, so you get a short throw shifter. Obviously it's going to go down only a certain amount, but it's a really quick, easy thing to do. It's not very invasive to get underneath the whole plastic and console of the WRX. So if you don't want to open up parts, I highly recommend you guys get this piece here. My buddy Nick has this part, and when you look at the shifter assembly, I thought he had an actual shorter shifter assembly. To uninstall the OEM shift knob is actually really easy. All you do is just twist it counterclockwise and put the countersunk one in and turn it clockwise, and that's it. So it costs around 40 to 70 bucks American. And if you are in Canada, it's going to cost about $22. So it comes to roughly around 15 bucks Canadian. It's a really good value. And if you're the kind of guy that doesn't want to touch anything, but you just want a little bit more of the shifting feel, so that's the mod I'm going to recommend to everyone. It's going to make a big difference, and that's something that I'm going to do personally as well. And I'm going to probably order one on Monday. And also they have tons of colors. You can even get custom colors as well if you want to do that as well. So check that knob out. And just a FYI, I'm not being sponsored by them at all. So number two is putting a shorter shifter in. I mean, there's Boomba and there's Cobb, and what that obviously does is create a shorter throw. So the nice thing of putting an aftermarket short throw shifter is that you can actually adjust them. So you can be very precise on what level you want it, how long or short the throws you want, right? So you compare that with a shift knob, you're kind of stuck to what it is. But having said that, with the whole shifter assembly, there is a lot more to it when it comes to installing. So it's going to take about 3-4 hours, and there are some finesse when you're trying to remove the assembly. So you could do it yourself, but if you can't, you can get a mechanic to do it. But now that cost is adding up. So depending on what your mechanic charges for a few hours, and the assembly costs around 170 bucks American. So the price does go up. So I'm not going to do this particular knob. I'm just going to put the shifter knob on. I think that's a really good compromise. So next up is the shift plate. So the best way I can describe it, if you think of a long rod, basically, the shifter assembly is on the top, and you reduce it, you make it smaller. So you have a smaller throw. Now, if you don't want to touch anything on top of your shifter assembly, you want to keep it OEM and make it look OEM, you can add a shifter plate, which is basically at the very bottom. So that creates a shorter length at the bottom. So now you're reducing your throws at the very bottom of that rod. I mean that's a very simplified way to see it, but I hope that kind of makes sense. So the nice thing about the shifter plate is that it makes your interior look very stock. So if that's something that you want to do, I highly recommend just doing the shifter plate. Now I want to do the shifter plate because generally speaking, I want to keep the way my car looks pretty stock looking. Yes, I want to get the knob, but if I don't want to have the knob and want to have a stock, I could put the OEM one easily back on. So it's just preference and whatever you want to do. You know, both options are great. Some of the shift plates are Perrin, Cartboy, and Buma. Now they're all very different, right? So we'll quickly go through them. So basically the Perrin one, it has no counterweight to it. So your shifts are gonna be very notchy. So keep that in mind, right? So then the Cartboy actually has a counterweight to it. So it's gonna help create smoother shift that make it easier. And the other Spectrum, the Buma one, is actually very heavy, and that's gonna create short throws that are gonna be a lot more easier and less notchy. Now, we'll mention that the Buma shifter plate is actually really big. So the stock assembly or the stock shifter plate has a guard on it to protect it from debris or dust that can get in there and may get inside the shifting mechanism and create some bad feedback. Because the Buma shifter plate is so big, they can't actually put the stock guard back on. So it is going to be a bit exposed to the elements outside. Now, keep in mind there is an undercarriage that's going to block a lot of the dirt going up into that area. Most likely that area is not going to get affected, but how I look at it is if Subaru is putting that plate there, it's there for a reason. And I'm sure it is going to protect it, so I don't want to take any chances with that. So I'm going to be settling on the Cartboy because I do want that counterweight to make that shifting a little easier. So next up is the rear shifter bushings and the cable bushings as well. So the main purpose of the cable bushing is to connect the shifter cable to the transmission link. And then with the rear shifter bushings, it's basically at the very bottom of your shifter assembly. So what those basically do is help keep all the shifter mechanisms in line and in check. Now, the OEM ones are actually made of rubber. So the problem with rubber is that they have give to it. So as you're making a shift, the bushings are going to expand or stretch a little bit. So that creates a bit of a sloppy feel to the shifter. So what you could do is get some aftermarket ones like a Perrin bushings that are actually all metal. So what that creates is a very hard mechanical shift. So those ones I highly recommend as well. They're really cheap, but they do take some labor to get at. You get under the car and that might take some time, but it's still very doable, and that's something that I'm going to do as well. So the last thing to talk about, which I really highly recommend as well, and it's cheap and easy to do, is the shifter stop. But I'm gonna explain it on the whiteboard. All right, so I got my whiteboard set up. Still need to find a better spot for it, but let's just jump into it. So with the stock setup, so between first and second, there's no shift stop there. So what actually happens is when you're moving from neutral and going to move to first or second, it's actually very sloppy here. So what I want you guys to do is sit in your car and, well, if it's stock, sit in your car, put the shifter in the center and just go hard left and hard right. And you're gonna notice a big difference between going all the way between 5 and 6 and 1 and 2. Reason being is that in 5 and 6, they actually put a shift stopper in it from stock, from the manufacturer. They failed to put it on the far left side. I don't know why. Maybe they're trying to save money, but it creates a very wobbly, non-precise feeling. So what you could do is get like a Perrin shift stop, which is all metal, or a Cartboy one, which is plastic. Now, between the two of them, it doesn't really make a difference, but with the plastic one, you're not gonna really have a clunking feel when you go all the way to the left to go in first or going down to second. So basically what it does is it puts a shift stop right here. So when you're in neutral and you wanna go into first gear, what's gonna happen is you move the shifter all the way to the left and it's gonna get stopped by the shift stop here. So you get a nice hard feeling there, and then you go straight up. So it's a lot more precise, where without the shift stop, you go all the way left, it gets a little vague, and as you're going up, so you might feel a little bit of wiggliness. So me personally, when I go from first to second, I do notice as I'm going down to second and about to go into second gear, it kind of goes to the right. So I hate that feeling. That's just the sloppiness of the OEM shifter. So let's wrap this video up here. If you just want to add some money to it and you don't want to spend so much money with the labor, if you're not very mechanically inclined, So I recommend you get the countersunk shift knob and the Cartboy or Perrin shift stop, and that's going to drastically improve the shifting and make a big difference. Now, if you want to go a little further and you have a little more money to waste, or you just more mechanically inclined and want to get in there and do yourself, and then you can add the shifter assembly or the shifter plate and change out the bushings to get a full proper setup that can really drastically improve the shifting feel, because as we all know, the shifting on the WRX, there's a lot more to be desired. So thanks for watching this video. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.